So there are these, there's a condition called diverticular disease.
Right.
Or colitis or IBD. Now, these are things that you used to often see happen later in life. And now we're starting to see them also happening earlier. And of course, this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
And I'm sure you'd have a lot to say about sort of the way we eat, the food we eat is sort of contributing to this. But we're seeing this empirically as well in the data.
And I find that data so important. And that's why I find these examinations, these full body MRIs so practical and helpful in my practice, because what I'll do is I'll analyze the scan. And I'll look at, say, a 40-year-old who has degeneration that is worse than my Prenuvo scan, and I'm 52. So I remember the Prenuvo team saying, wow, you've got an amazing skeletal, I was like, ooh, I like it that I have a sexy
the new compliment.
System,
we compliment
right?
your insides.
I know, right? Like, who cares about complimenting me on my skin anymore? Now it's my skeletal system. I'll take it. The following podcast is a Healthy Dog production. Welcome to the Healthy Dog Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nigma Talib. I'm a leading naturopathic doctor now for over 20 years, and I've consulted thousands of patients with chronic illnesses. I've had clinics all over the world, and I have a #1 bestseller, Younger Skin Starts in the Gut. Listen, I know there's a lot of health information out there in the health and wellness world, and it can be a bit overwhelming. So I'm here to set the record straight and give you my expertise along with my expert guests here in studio in sunny Los Angeles.
I only take drugs with other people who take them on a regular basis because I don't have time for that.
A lot of chronic diseases stem from mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yes, and you know what I love talking about, right? Poop.
Yes. You can ask me about my poop?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about poop.
Okay, please.
This podcast is your go-to for achieving optimal wellness, from the best of beauty and longevity and everything in between, because after all, wellness comes from the inside out. Today's guest is Andrew Lacy, the CEO and founder of Prenuvo, the company revolutionizing how we detect disease by using full body MRI technology to catch illness before symptoms even start. Under Andrew's leadership, Prenuvo has scaled across North America, trusted by top doctors and patients who want answers, not guesswork. With a background that spans McKinsey, Disney, and Stanford, Andrew isn't just disrupting healthcare, he's building a new model of proactive medicine that puts the power in your hands. This is a conversation about taking control, staying ahead, and changing the future of how we live and heal. Welcome to the Healthy Dog Podcast, Andrew. I'm so glad to have you back. I know we did our first Instagram Live back in 2019, so it's exciting. A lot of things have changed. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm glad I'm here now.
I'm glad you are too. Tell us, for listeners listening to this conversation, what is Prenuvo? Because everybody now knows about Prenuvo. There's been a lot of knows about the technology, but I want you to go deeper and tell us really what it is.
Sure. So it's a service that's about 15 years in the making. We take these incredibly detailed images using MRI of the entire body in about 45 minutes. And in 45 minutes, we can go from head to ankles, look at every single organ multiple times, and then produce a report for patients that go through every system of their body, every organ in that system, a whole bunch of conditions, hundreds of conditions that we might see or not see. And if we see them, what we think that you should do about it as a patient. And the goal really is to empower people with information about their health so they can go and live healthier lives.
And is this for everyone, all age groups?
Well, of course, the incidence of disease changes as you age. You're more likely to get cancer as you get older, for example, but younger people maybe have more reproductive problems. And so although the incidence of disease changes, we can have disease at any stage of our lives. So we image patients as young as 18. And I believe the oldest patient we've imaged is 98.
Okay, wow. I'd be so interested to see what a 98-year-old scan looks like versus a 20-year-old scan.
Well, I asked that person, I said, kind of like, why are you here? You're 98 years old. And they said, well, I want to live to 105.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
This is my preventative screening.
I love that. I mean, people are living longer and people want to do testing that's, preventative. and looking at the cause versus waiting for it to happen. In terms of the Prenuvo scanning, when people hear imaging, quite often what they think of is radiation.
Correct.
Everybody freaks out when they're being sent. Like even when I send patients to Prenuvo, which I send a lot of patients to Prenuvo since 2019, they'll get anxious around the fact that this imaging could cause, radiation damages. But we know MRI screening does not have any radiation and is very safe. Tell us more about MRI imaging for people listening to exactly what is MRI imaging.
Yeah, so it's non-ionizing. So we basically use a big magnet to orient the hydrogen in a certain way in your body, and when it relaxes back, it sends off a little signal. And hydrogen is an element that is in lots of biological tissue, and it's in different tissue at different proportions. And because of that, we can start to differentiate not only the different organs of your body, but different conditions that we see inside those organs. So you could do one of these scans every week if you wanted to. You could sleep in one of these machines if you wanted to do it. They're completely safe for the vast majority of people, that with a small exception of people that might have pacemakers or certain types of quite rare medical implants at this point in time. We're not talking about dental fillings. We're talking about, you'd know it if you had it. And for us, it was really important because there are other ways to screen for health that involve radiation. And our belief as a company is if you're screening people every year for cancer and disease, you shouldn't make the patient less healthy in the process of trying to keep them healthy.
Absolutely. And we're looking at this kind of screening in particular when we think about full body MRI screening, we think about cancers. And in particular, I think about pancreatic cancer, which is one of the most deadliest types of cancer. And we know that cancer cells in different stages grow differently. For example, pancreatic cancer. How long does it stay in stage 1 versus getting to stage 3? And by the time you have stage 3 pancreatic cancer, you're symptomatic. What I love about the full body MRI is that you can catch those individuals that are at that early stages of something like pancreatic cancer and actually do something about it. What is a percentage of patients that you see coming through your facility that you're diagnosing with pancreatic cancer, and how does that differ from the conventional hospital diagnosis model?
Well, it's a bit hard to tell, to give a precise answer, because first of all, cancer grows at different rates in different people at different ages. Obviously, the older you get, the slower cancer can grow because our cells are dividing more slowly. What we know for sure, because we've done lots of scans now, is that we find pathologically confirmed cancer in about 2.1, 2.2% of patients.
That's a lot.
Well, it's interesting because, for sort of the average age of people that we see, what you would expect, those people generally are being diagnosed about just under 1%. In any given year, 1% of those people will be diagnosed with cancer. So why are we diagnosing at 2.2 versus 1% in the health system out there? And the only real answer is that we're able to see the cancer that's growing over a certain number of years. And typically when the cancer is asymptomatic. And pancreatic cancer is a great example. There was a study a few years back where they unfortunately looked at pancreatic cancer that had killed patients, and they tried to age how long had the cancer been in the body. And the average age was 7 or 8 years, which leads us to believe that there's probably 2 to 3 years where most cancers can be diagnosed when they're still localized in the organ of origin. It's not a guarantee. Cancers grow at different rates. But as a general rule, obviously, if you are able to screen when a patient is still asymptomatic, your detection window is much greater.
And I think that's the key. I mean, you're not just looking for cancers, but you're looking for changes in skeletal tissue. You're looking for, potentially like breast lumps. It's kind of like going in and doing a breast examination. You're looking for these lumps. It's kind of like the MRI is doing like a breast exam throughout each organ and feeling for, is there any kind of solid lesions? What size are there? What is the size? And also looking at that as a baseline, right? So say I do a full body MRI scanning at age 40.
Yeah.
And then I do it every single year. I can look at my baseline to see, okay, well, are these lesions growing that are benign potentially, or are they staying the same? So it gives me an idea of like how to track if anything is changing in my body.
Well, I think that's the biggest unlock, to be honest. And the health system doesn't fully yet grasp this, which is doing these scans routinely enables you to manage disease differently. And that is the same with respect to benign lesions as it might be to the early stages of chronic disease. We get to see how these conditions are evolving over time or changing. And if they're, especially with lesions, if there's no change, most likely it's benign. If there are changes here, we become more concerned. So that longitudinal insight is really, really helpful for managing not just cancer, but the early stages of chronic disease in a completely different way.
What sort of diseases are you seeing? I mean, it'd be interesting to look at your data. Like it would be such a nerdy thing for me to know is what are you seeing in patients, say, I don't know, the average patient, are they in their 50s? Like first of all, let's ask the question, what is your average patient age that's coming in for these tests?
It depends on the location. In a market like LA, where we are,
Let's talk about LA.
It's
yes.
younger. It tends to be sort of early 40s.
Okay.
In markets like Minneapolis or Chicago, it becomes early 50s. So it really depends.
Okay.
Obviously, there's no time at which it's too early to start caring about your health.
Is anyone coming in their 20s for these scans?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say what I get most excited about, of course, it's incredible that we are able to find cancer early or aneurysms early and save lives. But what I find most exciting is that we can really help people understand and connect the way they're living their life with what's happening to the underlying physiology of their bodies. And in doing so, you can start to connect these activities today in your 20s with how you might present in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. And a great example is spinal conditions, where we have seen a really big shift in much earlier spinal degeneration in younger people. And it has a lot to do with the way we sit. It has a lot to do with the use of mobile devices. And these people might be asymptomatic for 20 or 30 years, but the question we ask them, or we ask them to ask themselves is, how do I want to show up in my 50s and 60s? Do I want to have great mobility? Right. Or, am I concerned about what this might look like in 20, 30 years, such that I should do something today about this?
I want to share something that could literally slow down how you age, inside and out. Let's talk about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or HBOT. You've probably heard of it being used for athletes or wound healing, but what you may not know is the latest research is showing powerful benefits for cellular regeneration, brain health, and even reversing some biological markers of aging. Hyperbaric chamber works where you breathe in oxygen at higher than normal pressure. This process stimulates your tissues with oxygen and beyond what your body can normally get in. That extra oxygen jumpstarts your cells, helps natural repair processes, reduces inflammation, and boosts collagen production. It even stimulates the growth of new blood vessels. Studies have shown improvements in telomere length, which are kind of like protective caps on your DNA that shorten as you age. Longer telomeres, that's linked to healthier aging. If you're feeling the effects of aging, maybe it's slower recovery, brain fog, or skin that's lost its luster and glow, hyperbaric oxygen might be a powerful tool to help you feel sharper, stronger, and more vibrant. Go to oxyhealth.com, that's OXYHEALTH.com, and type in discount code HEALTHYDOC10 for your first order. That's a really good way of showing them that, hey, look, you're sitting on your phone all day long on social media, working, sitting down, sitting is a new smoking, right? Like it's like we are living these lifestyles where we're glued to our desk, we're in our car, we're not moving as much as we should. And are you seeing these scans in younger individuals? In what ages are you seeing scans looking abnormal?
Yeah, so in fact, there's almost a quantitative answer because in the background, we have an AI team that is running some AI models on top of some of the information that we collect. And we now have a model that was trained over 100,000 spines. So we have trained the model to identify which features in the spine are sort of indicative of like biological age. And so when we give someone we give this model any one spine, it will predict the age of that person.
Wow.
And the problem is that if whether you're 20 or 25 or 30 or 35, these models have a hard time distinguishing you, which is to say the average 20-year-old is starting to show up with the same sort of degeneration that we are seeing in 35-year-olds.
That is incredible. And you think this is, and how many subjects would you say over, like how many patients are we talking about?
That's well over 100,000. So that's
Wow.
I would say a very highly accurate predictive model. And these are sort of insights that we would like to bring to patients more routinely. We're just working through the process of doing this and sort of validating the models. But we're also seeing similar things around digestion. Mm-hmm. So there are there's a condition called diverticular disease.
Right.
Or colitis or IBD. Now, these are things that you used to often see happen later in life. And now we're starting to see them also happening earlier. And of course, this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
And I'm sure you have a lot to say about sort of the way we eat, the food we eat is sort of contributing to this. But we're seeing this empirically as well in the data.
And I find that data so important. And that's why I find these examinations, these full body MRIs so practical and helpful in my practice, because what I'll do is I'll analyze the scan and I'll look at, say, a 40-year-old who has degeneration that is worse than my Prenuvo scan, and I'm 52. So I remember the Prenuvo team saying, wow, you've got an amazing skeletal, I was like, ooh, I like it that I have a sexy
the new compliment.
System,
we compliment
right?
your insides.
I know, right? Like, who cares about complimenting me on my skin anymore? Now it's my skeletal system. I'll take it, So it's interesting. I'll see patients, and these individuals are very low in their vitamin D.
Yeah.
And they're also have elevated C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker, and have high homocysteine. These are all like methylation defects and all the kinds of testing that we as naturopathic doctors test.
Yeah.
So we can actually see it, the phenotypic outcome of their Prenuvo test showing up as and it's kind of nice to show the patient a picture, because telling someone something versus showing them a picture of their body and saying, look, this is what's happening. We need to get on the vitamin D. We need to get on core training. We need to get on muscle building. You need to change your diet. And they're able to look at that and say, okay, we're going to make these changes until your next Prenuvo examination and until your next blood work. And when they see the data change, when they see the degeneration getting better, or they see, they love that. People like to get straight A's on their report card. In the same way, they want to get a good report card for a Prenuvo scan and for blood testing. And I think those are very important markers that enable us as physicians to look at that.
Well, I would say even as someone in the industry, I think these images are so powerful even for ourselves. I mean, I've been doing blood testing for a long time. I had pretty normal cholesterol, and now it started to go up. And I'm like, well, it's a number. Like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a number on it. I guess I should be worried, sort of like theoretically, maybe my risk of a heart attack has gone up. But it was really interesting when I did my most recent Prenuvo scan, you could see essentially what we call, and it's a very cute name for it, age-related white matter lesions in the brain.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah. And that basically means that's like very small amounts of brain tissue that have basically died because they're hypoxic. They didn't get oxygen. And why didn't they get oxygen? Because the cardiovascular system's not working as well.
Right.
So it's sort of really interesting to be able to connect these numbers on a page with something that's actually happening in the body. And even when you're in the space, it's really easy. We're busy. We have a lot of other things going on. I can deal with that next year. But when you look at a picture, you sort of can't really hide from the impact. I think it's a really great catalyst.
Andrew, why did you get into this? I mean, you come from a entrepreneurial background, you've scaled many businesses. What made you go into this Prenuvo scanning? Because it's like very different from what you've done before.
Yeah, we were joking about this before, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. So, and I often like to say, and I believe it to be true actually, especially the Silicon Valley type entrepreneurs. I mean, this is a profession that is profoundly unhealthy. It's bad for your health because people work too hard. We are stressed a lot. We don't eat well. We don't exercise well. And I remember just one day waking up and sort of looking in the mirror and saying, hey, we're doing all this to achieve something in the future. We put all this time in to like build a successful company or change the world. But, wouldn't it be nice to be certain that I'm going to be around to see the fruits of that labor? And so it was my own health journey that sort of led me to these imaging exams, earlier versions of what we do. And as soon as I went through that as a patient, had such a profound experience, I realized that this is what I wanted to focus on to bring it to as many people as possible. Yeah. I would say just to add on, look, I'm not in the longevity space. There are a lot of sort of alpha males that, have six packs and I still don't, even in the context of living a healthier life than I used to, I don't have 10 hours a day to think about, eating 100 supplements and doing a bunch of stuff. For me, this is about, a very high yield exam that gives me information that's actionable. And, you can often get 80% of the positive impact to your health from a small number of interventions. And that's what, as a busy person with a young child, that's what I focus on.
And I feel like it's a personal experience. It's a personal story that drives one as an entrepreneur. And that's what happened to me as well. Growing up with irritable bowel syndrome, which is a cop-out diagnosis. It's a crappy diagnosis, no pun intended. Like what's IBS? It's kind of BS diagnosis. And so I had to like go to a naturopathic doctor to unpack everything that I was eating, my gut microbiome. And I'd been to, I don't know how many medical doctors and received that same diagnosis and really no direction, no talk about, what you're eating, your anxiety levels, none of it. And until I went to a naturopathic doctor was when I decided this is the kind of doctor I want to be, because not only do I want to prevent illness, which is what we're thought of as naturopathic doctors, we don't just prevent, we treat chronic illness, which is the best of both worlds. And that's why I feel like this technology is super important to add to something, because I can actually do something about that Prenuvo test. Whereas I feel like if a medical doctor gets this test, they feel it to be a burden. Like, what am I going to do with this test? And I'm going to ask you the question, are we fear mongering? Are we over testing? Is this technology something that we need to be careful about? Is it, I know what my answer is, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
I mean, my answer maybe is a little bit different, which is I think that there is fear-mongering going on, and that fear-mongering is in fact being done by the traditional reactive healthcare system.
Right.
Because if you have created an entire population of people who their only interaction with diseases like cancer is because they have a loved one that had it diagnosed too late and passed away, or their only interaction with chronic disease, which by the way, I hate that term too, because chronic is like a stage of a disease that's been around for a long time.
Yes.
It's like some horrible thing, kidney failure, or, liver failure or dementia, all of which are diseases that play out over like decades. If the only thing you interact with are those stories, how does that not make anyone afraid of learning about their health? Isn't it easier just to like kind of continue life in sort of ignorance? What is it called? Ignorant bliss.
Ignorance is bliss. Yes.
For another few days, because there's no positive stories. Why would I want that story to be my story? And so I feel like the fear exists in the system as it is. And actually what we're trying to do is remove fear by sort of normalizing the early stages of these disease. Hey, there is a different story here. There's a story here that might, yes, involve cancer, but it's stage 1 and it doesn't need to change your life. Or a disease here that, yes, it might be fatty liver, but you know what? It's not liver failure. And I think we talk inside our company about, how do we know that we've really made a difference? And of course, it's great that we're saving lives. I say like one of the real indicators here is if the definition of disease, if this idea of disease is less scary for people. So our objective as a company is to like actually remove fear. Exactly the opposite of what we're accused of.
Absolutely. I've built my entire clinical philosophy and even wrote a book called Younger Skin Starts in the Gut around one simple truth. If your gut isn't optimal, nothing else works. Genova Diagnostics GI Effects test is the gold standard in functional stool testing, mapping your microbiome, digestion, inflammation, and nutrient absorption with clinical precision. It's a crappy job, but someone has to do it. And no one does it better than Genova. Visit genovaconnect.com and use my code HEALTHYDOC15 for 15% off your first stool test. What does this test not test for? Or this technology, the full body MRI, what does it not test for? And what should you be, aware of? And it's not an end all and be all, but it's a pretty good indication if there's a solid lesion, but what does it not look for?
Yeah, to be clear, there's absolutely no such thing as a perfect test that can see everything. And we want to be really clear with patients when they come in what we're good for and what you should supplement us with. We don't replace standard of care screening. There's a lot of evidence behind that, and we encourage people to continue to do those tests, be them mammography or colonoscopy and so on. We are able to see the end organ damage from metabolic conditions or hormonal conditions, but we can't tell you anything about, your cholesterol level or your hormone levels, things that you would get from blood testing, which is why we've added it actually to our tests at Prenuvo. We now do some blood too.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's relatively recent. And then probably the organ that we have the hardest time seeing directly is the heart, because you're always breathing and your heart is beating. And so you can take great images with an MRI, but it takes a lot of time, like an hour.
Yeah, because you make us like hold our breath.
Yeah.
And in the MRI, just so that, you can look at the organs, but it's impossible to see the heart.
Yeah. So with MRI, we can also see the end impact of heart problems in many cases. So if your heart is not pumping blood well enough, we see fluid accumulation in the lungs or the lower extremities. If you have cardiovascular disease, we start to see this showing up in the brain because they have little capillaries there that get blocked a lot easier. But these are all indications. And so if someone has either an interest in making sure they stay on top of heart disease or they have a family history, there are other, CT-based tests that you can do for that.
What are you finding, Andrew? What are you, I'm sure you're using AI, which I want to talk to you about in a minute. Yeah. But what are you finding? What if you're testing, I know it's a broad question, but what are you seeing on average in almost all patients?
Everyone has spinal degeneration.
Right.
A large number of people have metabolic disease. So we see fatty liver or fibrotic liver. And we're seeing this in about 1/4 of our patients. And our patients on average are healthier than the average American.
Of course.
So, that means the incidence of this in America at large has got to be pretty high. We see obviously a lot of joint issues in patients as they age. We are able to, in men, we do a very detailed prostate examination, so we can start to understand how the prostate is changing as people age. And a lot of people have what's called BPH, which is or prostatitis, which sort of tend to increase the size of the prostate and can also increase PSA levels if they're being tested. What else? I mean, there's so much. We see in about 10% of people, we see digestive problems. And this usually shows
10%?
Yeah, that's a function of like we are imaging generally younger people, but it's around 10% that we see diverticular disease or colitis or IBD.
I guess that's pretty high considering diverticulitis doesn't occur until much older in age.
Yeah, and we can't see SIBO, so that's a little bit harder.
Yeah, that's hard to see, those bacteria. They're so sneaky. Impossible to see that on MRI, let alone a test.
Yeah, so And what we're actually seeing is inflammatory changes in the bowel.
Okay.
So you mentioned, how we can use MRI to feel for tumors. So that's exactly right. And it's how we describe it sometimes. We have one sequence that we're very good at that can kind of find hard tissue inside the body. And when women feel their breast for lumps, not every lump is a cancer, but every cancer is a lump. So these solid tumors show up as harder tissue. And the other thing that shows up as sort of harder tissue on these scans is tissue that's inflamed. And so when we see someone that has sort of a chronic digestive issue, this sequence, and almost you can see the outline of the bowel showing up with, basically as inflammation across the entire colon. And why we're concerned about this is, one, it's not very pleasant as a patient. I mean, makes life pretty painful. But two, also increases tremendously the risk of cancer in the digestive system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is and I'm just curious, personal curiosities, what is the craziest thing you've seen, at Prenuvo? And have you ever had any scans that you've done where you've been like, you need to go right now to emergency? Like you've seen,
Oh, yeah.
Some brain scans or, aneurysms. Like what have you seen where you've had to like rush someone or say you need to get in right away?
So on the crazy things, I think, because that's a fun one to start with. We've seen people with a condition where all the organs are reversed in their bodies. We see people that have only one kidney and they had no idea. They're in their 50s and they had no idea and they had one. We've seen women in particular who have fertility problems. They're going to like great fertility doctors, and it's us that diagnose that they have septated uterus.
Okay.
Which can be fixed with a surgical procedure, but with it, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to become pregnant. And sometimes we'll tell women this, and they'll cry because they've been going to
they've
such
tried
a horrible
everything,
journey.
yes, and it's an anatomical issue.
Correct. On the more crazy end, I've seen this in men. I actually saw a condition like this in a woman recently, but men sometimes can get obstructed bladders, and the bladder is like a balloon that just keeps growing. And, it can grow to like 3 or 4 gallons. And these poor men, they feel like they're putting on weight. They don't know how to get rid of it. And what's actually happening is they've got a massive bladder inside their abdomen.
Wow.
And we saw a similar one with a woman who had a 20-pound ovarian cyst.
A what?
A 20-pound ovarian cyst.
Wow.
So again, she presented just not feeling very well, feeling lethargic, couldn't figure out why she was putting on weight, and tried all of the things that are available these days to lose weight, and it wasn't going because it wasn't fat. It was essentially fluid inside her body, and it was relatively easy for her to lose 20 pounds after we made that diagnosis. So it's just, for me, it's mind-blowing that you can have something like that inside your body and not know. Or you can have a kidney. You can be missing a kidney for your entire life and not know about it, because we don't look inside systemically. Yeah. So that's, I'd say there's a lot of these sort of like medical oddities that we see, and it's I think that's really cool.
I think it's super cool. I would love to spend a day and look at all of that, because I think it's fascinating, because you can actually go and see the full human body. I mean, I love my Prenuvo scans. I sometimes look at them from time to time, and it's just fascinating, the information that you get. Andrew, why do you think that your company is getting so much criticism from the conventional medical doctors? You're alternatively getting a lot of praise for what you do, but you are getting some criticisms. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, look, I think the challenge mainly is around education. I mean, since the beginning of time, we've reached out to physicians. Mm-hmm. And I would say 8 out of 10 physicians have been skeptical about what we do. And
that's a lot. Yeah. 8 out of 10.
Yeah. And if we bring them in and give them a chance to experience it and actually see what we're able to find with these imaging, about 8 out of 10 start referring us patients. So there's this kind of information asymmetry. The conventional wisdom is kind of easily dispelled when these physicians have firsthand knowledge.
Do you think it's because they feel that this sort of technology is going to be sort of a tool for doctors or practitioners to give patients treatments, or rather medication that's really not indicated in terms of false positives? Or what?
No,
do you think that's where that comes from?
I think they have real fears, by the way, and I'll share them.
Yes.
I think some part of it was built out of there was a CT screening sort of thing that happened in America 30 years ago, where you could go to a mall and you could do a CT health screen. and the technology was bad, and it wasn't even low dose CT, it was high dose CT back then.
Yikes.
And
Okay.
you know, even the FDA got involved and sort of shut it down. And it sort of like sullied a little bit the notion of doing whole body screening. It was a different technology. You know, we're using MRI, that was CT. So there's like many differences, but like the memory of this is still quite fresh for a lot of physicians that are older. But the other aspect, which is I think really, really important, particularly for your listeners if they're thinking about these exams, is that unlike, let's say, a blood test, which MRI is not sort of a commodity. So MRI has a lot more in common with, say, heart surgery than it does with getting a blood test, getting a cholesterol test. So where you go, what hardware they have, what imaging acquisition protocols they use, most importantly, the training and expertise of the radiologists have a massive impact on the accuracy of the scan. And the challenge a little bit is that there are tons of groups out there that have MRI. And the reality is they said, well, if these guys are doing it, why couldn't we? We have an MRI. And consumers perhaps are not necessarily educated enough about like what the differences in image quality can mean for just how much peace of mind you can get from doing one of these scans. And I think that's also a challenge. You know, you'll see as we have sort of continued to grow, we've seen competitors pop up that are doing exams that aren't clinical diagnostic quality. So they're taking fuzzy pictures and they'll say everything's good, or they'll say there's a problem.
Right.
And so you end up with way more false negatives and way more false positives. So unfortunately, that's a challenge that we face as a company that is very much sort of a clinical practice. I have over 100 physicians and radiologists that trained at like great schools that really believe in this and are building a clinical practice around it. So that's the challenge. There's a lot of noise, and there'll be more. And consumers need to be really aware about, if they're considering doing one of these things, exactly, the bona fides or the sort of experience of the place they might be going to do it.
From PMS to perimenopause to menopause to postmenopause, I've lived through it all. And through every stage, one thing becomes clear. Hormone fluctuations change how our bodies regulate temperature, especially at night. When your body overheats, even slightly, it disrupts deep, restorative sleep. The kind of sleep your hormones, metabolism, and mood depend on. That's why I can't live without my Rani Lounge pajamas. Their advanced technology activates natural fibers, making the fabric moisture resistant, naturally fresh, and ultra breathable, allowing your body to stay cool and regulate temperature the way nature intended. Better temperature control means deeper sleep, better recovery, and a body that feels truly at ease. Whether at home or traveling, staying cool, fresh, and comfortable has never felt so effortless. Go to RaniLounge.com, that's RaniLounge.com, and use my code HealthyDog15 and get 15% off your first order and experience sleep the way it was meant to be. So not all MRI scans are created equally.
Not at all.
Because when you hear MRI screening, you think, okay, well, how can it be different from another MRI? And it makes sense. You'll see in some MRI reports, we noticed an artifact. We noticed, small vessel disease. We noticed, and then another MRI will completely miss it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, and all I know now is Prenuvo. So I'm completely spoiled. And, we're in a situation, we're in a healthcare crisis.
Yeah.
There aren't enough MRI screening machines in hospitals. Mm-hmm. And we have to, as patients have to take matters into their own hands. And I really don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it is your body, right? People go to the doctor to ask for advice. And for too long, doctors have had too much control over, what their patients are doing. The patient, if you listen to your patient, you will find out what is wrong with them, because listen to them. Yeah. And a lot of conventional type doc models, and I'm not necessarily dissing them, I'm just stating factually that, because I see a lot of patients that come from their conventional docs and their docs dismiss them.
Yeah.
And you can't dismiss someone if they're having symptoms that are, could be life saving if you did an MRI, if you did blood work. I also get flack from some of these conventional docs that I'm over testing.
Yeah.
But when I've quote unquote over tested, I've found methylation defects. I've found, inflammation in the body that they had no idea they had, and that was causing the underlying factor. Anemias, thyroid illnesses, autoimmune conditions that have never been diagnosed or treated. And then as soon as you treat those, the patient gets better, and you repeat the bloods and they're better.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, I feel like these Prenuvo scans are, life-changing. They're also peace of mind. I do them annually just for peace of mind, because even though my family has a high rate of cancer in the family, it doesn't mean I'm going to get it, but it just gives me that additional peace of mind. I know it's not the end all and be all, and that I have to do other tests and, follow up. But I think it's a really good screening for patients to do, and I recommend it annually.
No, I appreciate that. It's, and just to double click on something you said there, which I agree so much, is like listening to your bodies. Mm-hmm. And I would say,
just like you did when you were not feeling good.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, there's a real, at least we see it, difference here between men and women in this regard. Like women are much better at listening to their bodies than men.
I think so, yes. Sometimes.
We'll have
men are getting better.
It's possible. I think, by the way, this is a difficult challenge because, we're just really not great as humans at recognizing really, really small changes that happen over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. So I guarantee you, if we were able to take a vacation from our 50-year-old bodies and wake up as a 20-year-old for a week, we would have a lot more things that we would consider symptoms. Right. But we can't. I wake up and I feel like I've had a good night's sleep, and I wake up feeling fine, but I'm sure I'm not feeling as fine as I used to when I woke up at the age of 20. So it's just really hard to tell the difference. These are really subtle changes. And I think finding a way to tune yourself, really build an antenna for how you're feeling, is I think a really important skill. I think men are slower to adopt it than women. We certainly have a lot more men. We have a lot of women that come in saying, hey, I don't know what it is. These are indeterminate symptoms, and our health system's bad at that. And a lot of men come in because they're being dragged by the ear by their partner.
I get that too.
And, the average health of the man is worse than the average health of the woman.
It's interesting, how you said that, what we would ask our 20-year-old self. And I feel better now in my 50s than I did in my 20s and 40s. 40s were the worst decade because the whole perimenopause thing, which is a whole other story. But I feel better because now I know my body enough to say, I can't do that, because if I do that, I'm going to feel like this tomorrow, or I need to take my supplements regularly because I feel better, because I'm vitamin D deficient. I need to continue on my vitamin D. And I'm not going to get those aches, and I'm not going to get that afternoon fatigue crash, So I feel like we have more information now than ever before to actually listen to our bodies and know because in my 20s, I had no idea that was what was causing me to feel horrible the next day. I had more resilience, but still I feel better now because I know what to do.
Yeah, but I think that resilience is sort of it's a indicator of just a biological capacity to put up with damage when you're younger that you don't really have when you're older. The quintessential example is drinking alcohol when you're 20 versus when you're 50.
It's a different story.
Completely different story, and I think that's a little biomarker for how all of the organs are performing when you're 50. You have to be more careful.
Yes.
So with that in mind, I'm living a healthier life like you are today. I can imagine you feel better, but our capacity to sort of treat our bodies badly has 100% gone down.
It's decreased. Yes.
Yeah.
Kim Kardashian posted on her Instagram that she came in and did the Prenuvo, and it just went crazy.
Yeah.
It just went viral. I just want to say, for the record, I was there first.
It's true.
But that really put you on the map. What was that like for, and how did that happen?
Yeah, a lot of people think it was some big sort of strategy in some ways, but we all have always just taken this view that if you're doing something new, if you're building a new category of product, Doesn't matter whether that's a new approach to naturopathic medicine or MRI screening like this, like what we do. It's really hard to sort of like acquire a customer, like buy your way to a meaningful business. The most inexpensive way to do that is to just provide a tremendous service and let word of mouth do its thing. So Kim heard about us through someone else that had a great experience, and that person heard about us through someone else that had a great experience. So it's more of a reflection, I think, of the fact that people really value what we do. About 90% of people come in through word of mouth. And they usually hear about us from a few different directions, not just Kim, but their neighbor or a friend or a loved one or something, a story that they've heard from a few different directions. And I think when we opened in LA, it just so happened that we had really wonderful people come in that obviously have high impact voices, and they've been really happy to share a positive experience with a wider audience, and that saved lives. So we just sort of have leaned into that, not really doing much different to what we've been doing all along, which is just provide something that people really value, give them clarity about their health.
And you actually have a live testimonial where you did save a life, through early detection. That was Maria Menudo. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. And I only know what she has shared publicly, frankly,
obviously.
Which is she had, and this is a really classic and I think unfortunately quite common story, where she had these symptoms. Mm-hmm. They were a little bit indeterminate, pain that came and went in a certain part of her body in her flank. And they were being ignored by physicians for some time. And eventually she did a CT scan and it missed it. And then she came in, she met Alina, who runs some of our business development at the company and at a function, I think. And Alina convinced her to come and give this a go, and not really expecting to find anything. And and it was through that scan that we were able to see that lesion. And she's since been treated. She's had that pancreatic lesion removed, and I believe is in good health again. So, I mean, it's a wonderful story for her. I would say it's quite a common story. A lot of people, where we find something, they have had symptoms that have been ignored, and they tend. And I would say there are lots of studies about this phenomenon, particularly affecting women and minorities. So what's nice about these scans is they're just a great equalizer. Of course we care about how you feel. We ask you your medical history, but we put everyone in, we give everyone the same protocols, and we catalog everything that we see.
True wellness lives in the smallest details: the air you breathe, the water you wash with, and the surfaces you touch. That's why Koala Eco, with their beautiful botanical ranges for home, laundry, body, and even pets, is the only brand I trust. Elegant living without compromise. Visit koalaeco.com, that's KOALAECO.com, and use my code HealthyDoc15 for 15% off your first order. And you mentioned something about people that come to you are obviously of higher socioeconomic, they have more funds to spend on a scan. It's something like $2,500 per scan. And so you're missing that percentage of population that potentially don't have $2,500 to spend, and it's not covered under insurance. I currently understand that you're doing a longitudinal study in Boston that measures a whole population of individuals of all socioeconomic backgrounds, so that you can get some real data. How long is that study going to take to complete?
Well, the crazy thing is we've already done sort of an economic model. So we looked at the things that we are finding and the stage at which we're able to diagnose it, and we can compare that to the average stage of diagnosis. And obviously there's a huge cost difference. So a stage 1 cancer costs way less than a metastatic cancer to treat, and has way better outcomes. So we're able to already understand that there's potentially a tremendous ROI here. If these scans were adopted by the entire population, you might end up with a health system that was half the size it is today, and lead to much better outcomes for patients. So these scans could be a solution to the deficit problem in America, a solution that no one's talking about, and also improve the life expectancy of the average American. So that's a world I want to create. Now, an economic model is one thing. We need to test this also in real life. And that's what this longitudinal study is all about. And there we're collecting data on what we see, what we don't, what comes up that we didn't see, of the things that we saw, if there was additional testing, what happened, if things were treated, how did it affect the cost of treatment by catching it early. And the goal here is to build sort of an health outcomes sort of assessment of the impact of these scans, were they to be adopted by the population. So that's the goal. In the meantime, we have discounts that we provide for certain groups like first responders and veterans. Our most inexpensive scan is $1,000. So there is something cheaper than $2,500. It looks for cancer.
What is that scan? It's MRI?
It looks for cancer in the torso.
Okay.
So about 85%, I believe, of the cancers that we can have are in the torso. So
Right.
this is looking for everything from the shoulders down to the pelvis.
And then is there a scan that does everything? That
So-
does the cancer and does
Yeah,
the
so
full skeletal?
2,500 is the scan
full
that does
scan.
everything. Think of that as like the comprehensive,
The Cadillac.
yeah, exactly, the 500-point checkup for your body.
Right.
And hopefully these costs will evolve as we adopt more AI in the future, or figure out how to do this at a much greater scale. That would bring down the cost too. So we're fast growing, but still a small business in the context of healthcare.
AI is just shooting up now, and I feel like in the next 2 years, things are not going to be the same as they are now. It's going at such a fast and rapid rate with medical AI. What are you doing in this space for AI using this technology?
Yeah, there's 3 areas that we're looking at intently, and we have models that are in various stages of development. Mm-hmm. The first is using AI to speed up the scan.
Okay.
Obviously, these machines are expensive. The cost of running these clinics is expensive. So if we could, say, halve the time it took to acquire those images, and using AI, that would be great. Now,
What is it? 45 minutes, right?
45 minutes. If
Currently.
we could do that in 20 minutes, that would be fantastic. Now, the only caveat is we don't want to sacrifice image quality. The fastest whole body scan I could do actually right now is 3 minutes. The problem is it would be a bad scan.
Right.
So for us, it's about how can we use this technology, the hardware and the AI, to sort of get on a different quality versus time curve, and we're not there yet that we can do a 20-minute scan that is clinical diagnostic quality. No one is. And if anyone's doing it in 20 minutes, it's not clinical diagnostic quality. You are not getting the same peace of mind. The second area that we're looking at to AI to sort of really change is diagnosing disease. So we have models that are able to look at different disease states, and ideally in the future be a sort of a sidekick, a second read next to a radiologist, and that might make the radiologist more productive, and also would improve the accuracy of the scan. Because just like there's no perfect test, there's also there's no perfect radiologist that catches absolutely everything. So having another set of eyes, digital eyes, can be really helpful in that. And then the third area, which I'm really excited about, is we touched a bit on this in the context of the spine, is how can we use this tremendous data to deliver insights that a radiologist couldn't deliver. Mm-hmm. They can start to understand, and age the different organs and systems of your body. And we already have models running that can say, look at your spine today, and it can actually show us a picture of what your spine will look like in 30 years based on your current lifestyle.
Okay.
And if you change your lifestyle, how that might change.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So imagine that for the spine, for the brain, for the liver, for the kidneys, for the digestive system,
Yes.
for the joints, and all
That's
this
going to
stuff.
make everybody go to the gym more.
Well, I think it's, I think it sort of plays into a little bit this, these quantitative metrics. There's a certain type of person that really responds well to this. I think all of us do to some extent.
All of us do, yes. If you exercise more and you do more core work, in 10 years, your spine could look like this, or it could look like this. I mean, which one are you going to choose, right?
Yeah. So I'm really excited for that piece because it's really unique. No, you really need to have, the sort of data that we have to be able to deliver those insights. And I think it pairs really well with other modalities like blood or hormonal testing. Maybe we can come up with a much better and more accurate sort of idea of biological age.
Wouldn't it be cool to input genomic testing? So looking at predictive genomics. So for those listening, genomics are looking at your SNPs of your DNA to look at what your risk factors are to methylation defects, homocysteine levels, like cardiovascular risk, non-alcoholic fatty liver, like all of those risk factors, and incorporate the scan in there. And then also incorporate when you do a Prenuvo test and you see a lump or you see a nodule rather on your thyroid and you follow up with an ultrasound, incorporating that data in there. Because obviously with MRIs, you can't always get, information about what does that nodule mean.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to gather all the information for the patient so that the doctor has, I think
has
everything.
And we just had this really wonderful moment where we finally have a lot more tests that we can do that give us insight into our body. So I would add to that proteomics, for example, and you mentioned methylation, but there's sort of interesting tests you can do there. Even hormonal tests, allergy testing. I mean, there's so many things that really people haven't, because it's not part of the standard of care sort of screening approach. You sort of have to be really sick to ever access one of these things. And I think there's just such tremendous information there to help you as you're sort of driving your body around through life, and you want to arrive at a destination probably that's further than we would by default. Like, you need this sort of information. You need these waypoints to help you know whether you're heading in the right direction.
Yes.
So I'm a big fan of what we call in the space like this multi-omics approach, where you sort of combine these things together and it just sort of layers on a whole richer set of insights than you otherwise would get from any one test.
I wish you guys had a Prenuvo for dogs. I think that would be your business would take off because everybody loves their dogs more than some of their children, so I feel like that would be kind of cool too to do.
We've thought about it, to be honest. You have a weird thing when you start reading all these clinical studies, it's amazing what people are
Dante's
doing.
Asking you right now. He's like, come on, get an MRI scan for me, please.
It's amazing what these PhDs will write clinical studies, papers on. There's literally a paper measuring the amount, the germs left behind by a dog in an MRI machine compared to a human.
And what was that?
Dogs are cleaner.
I knew it. Dante's asking for a scan.
There we go. No, we'd love to do it at some point.
That would be, honestly, that would be a game changer because we're all trying to extend our dog's health because, as you know, dogs don't live as long and as humans do. And, we're living in such a toxic environment that we've created and subjected our pets to. So, yeah, that would be kind of cool.
And they struggle to tell us what's going on with their health, too. That's the other piece. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have one last question for you. We always talk about, you've heard about love languages, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm just curious, what is your love language? Because there's different ones. There's affirmation, there's acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. What are your love languages? Just curious.
I'm more around physical touch.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so Dante knew. He came right up to you.
And my wife is more around quality time. So that's sort of the dimension of tension in our relationship. I'm trying to get better at quality time.
Okay. What about receiving gifts? Do you like receiving gifts?
No, it makes me anxious for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not good at it. Yeah.
Okay. But you like...
I don't like the attention of it.
Oh, you don't like the attention of it. Well, it's too bad because I have a gift for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry, but it's kind of, I think it's up your alley, because I know you're always about wanting to optimize your health, and that's why you got into this business, which I think is a fascinating story. And I think it's all those businesses always do well when you have a personal story attached to it, especially when it comes to health, right? We spend the first half of our lives trying to get wealthy, and then the second half trying to get healthy. So you were kind of in the right space where you're kind of doing both at the same time. And I think it's great. Kudos to you for doing well in this business because you are helping people and you are saving lives.
I appreciate that.
So I want to give you the gift of health. And I don't know, Andrew, if you kind of know what I'm now known for. It's kind of, I never thought in a million years I'd be known for poop. Like people know me, go to her, she's a poop detective. I'm trying to make it sexy. It's really hard, but I'm trying. But I'm going to give you a stool test. It's a 3-day stool test. It's going to analyze your gut microbiome. It's going to analyze, who's living there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then as soon as your results are back, I will go over with you what we need to do to optimize that, because we know if your gut is healthy, then your whole body is healthy.
Should we do an Instagram live with my results?
Do you want to? I would
try
love
it.
that.
Why not?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do my Prenuvo results and you'll do your poop results.
There we go. I usually, when I'm giving gifts, I usually blush. And now I don't know whether I'm blushing because I've received a gift or or the type of gift that I'm being given.
I'm making you do a poop test. People think about me now. I have patients that say, "Oh, I think about you every time I poop." And I'm like, I don't know whether to receive that as a compliment. They're like, when they have a good poop, they're so proud. They're like, I want to take a picture and send it to you. I'm like, please don't. Please don't.
I have a young child now, so
Right.
poop has been normalized with me.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to go home and do this test, and then I'd love to go over it with you. And then that's a great idea.
Let's do it. And should I try one of these? Should I have a little? Will this help me on my test?
Well, this is going to help you with your skin and your immune system, people with all these viruses going around right now. So let's cheers to good health.
Cheers.
Thank you, Andrew, for being on the Healthy Dog Show. It was so informative. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.